Hi everyone. It's been a while since my last video, and don't want to leave you hanging about the Mandela effect, but that video is going to have to wait a little while longer. I'm always trying to make sure that I have useful information for you before I post a new video. Hence my delay, and life, as you know, tends to go on in other realms of my existence. So here I am back again after binge watching Stranger Things. I noticed a lot of chatter about Stranger Things, the 8-episode TV show on Netflix that people have talked about already, and I finally found something that I thought was not discussed yet and that I could shed some personal light on. So here I am. Now, if you have not seen Stranger Things, I am going to spoil it for you. So, if you haven't seen it, please turn off this video and go watch it first, and then come back. Okay, so Stranger Things was a lot of fun to watch. If you were alive in the 80s, if you were born in the 80s or the 70s, it's a very nostalgic throwback. And there's a lot of homages to a bunch of different movies and TV shows from around that time. One of the most interesting things for me was the prominence of conspiracy theories and talk about government cover-ups. Now, that's interesting because you don't always see such blatant references to conspiracy theories in movies and television. So already we had talk about MK Ultra just out in the open, and the Montauk Project out in the open, and there's just a general vibe of government cover-ups that were not specifically named but hinted at. So that caught my attention immediately, and what I think is that the Duffer Brothers may be conspiracy theorists, and I think they're trying to send us a coded message. So, what I want to convince you of is that they are trying to send us a coded message, and they have included the themes of MK Ultra and the Montauk Project to catch the attention of conspiracy theorists, but that there is another deeper message in here that is not just right in front of you. If it were right in front of you, then anyone could see it. I think they're trying to tell something to conspiracy theorists if we have the ability to see it. So, without further ado, I'm going to start talking about what I think is going on. So, let me start by talking about the Upside Down. I think that is, they're sending a coded message through their discussion of the Upside Down. Now, what do we know about the Upside Down? One of the first things that we know about the Upside Down is from 11. Now, she takes a Dungeons and Dragons board, Now, I don't know much about the board game, having not played it myself, but I do know that it has a grid and that you can move across this grid. And so I believe it is used in order to say where you are spatially located in comparison with other members of your team and with monsters. And there are certain rules about who you can attack and when, based upon where you are on the board. So she picks up a board, and she says that Will is not in the real world. If he were here in the regular world, he would be in this spatial location, and you would be able to see all of the rules governing how he could travel, who he could attack, who he could team up with. Because on this side of the board is where all the action is. And it's very clearly defined. And it's easy to see, and all the other people and monsters are here. She takes the board and she flips it upside down. And she says Will is in the upside down. Now the upside down is technically a part of the board, but this is part of the board that was never meant to be used. It's usually on the table, directly touching the table. It is completely dark. There are no landmarks. There's no way to see your spatial location with anyone else. But and there's no one on this side of the board. It was never meant to host people or monsters on this side of the board. And what I find really interesting is that she says Will is directly located on this part of the board. Basically where he was in the right side up place, but now in the upside down. And I find this very telling because that means that Will is still in play in this game, but that it's dark and confusing and lonely. So he is not gone. He's not out of the game. He is simply in the place that is called the Upside Down. And it's called the Upside Down not because there are no rules or because the rules are totally foreign, but because the rules are exactly the opposite. Think of a child who says, oh, today is opposite day. That means good is bad, black is white, up is down. But you still have the rules you were playing with before. You just have to take the opposite stance on them. I think this is important to note that there are still rules. We still have an idea about what they are, but that they have been inverted a bit, and that he is still there. Okay, so that's the beginning of the talk about the Upside Down and what it represents. Let's look a little bit more at what we know about the Upside Down. Now, based upon this view of a board, I noticed some similarities between the Upside Down and certain flat earth theories. So I'm going to draw a line. If you imagine, that is 11's representation of the board, or excuse me, of the upside down is a very flat board. So let's just draw that there. And we have seen a few other things about the upside down. We have seen that in the regular world, this is Will's mom's house, for example. In the regular world, the sun is shining, it's bright outside. Not saying that everything's perfect, but it's the world we're used to. And the upside down is very similar. Again, let's say that house exists in exactly that same location, but over here, it's dark outside. And there's almost nobody out here. If there is, they're all hiding. We don't see anyone except for Will and Barbara and the monster in the upside down during the first 8 episodes. Okay, so it's very dark, and there's a lot of particulate matter in the air. It's really interesting. It's all over. I think, to me, it looks like some kind of ash. And that makes me think of either a nuclear winter or maybe a volcanic winter. So perhaps in the upside down, there is some kind of catastrophe that happened that doesn't exist in the regular world. Okay, so we already know the upside down is very similar to the real world. As you've seen before, people are located in similar places in the regular world and the upside down. But the upside down is more desolate and scary. And we have seen Barbara and Will, to an extent, be harvested for energy or food for some sort of creature in the upside down. And that's an important point to make right here. So if you're following me so far, you may, and if you're familiar with some of the flat earth theories, you may see some similarities between this upside down and the regular world. Here's Will's mother, here's Will, and they're able to communicate with each other somehow. You may see some similarities between this and some of the flat earth theories that we've seen out there, where there's a belief that there is a bright sun and a black sun. And there is a way to travel between these two worlds, possibly through the North Pole. And that this sun represents the physical world we see around us. The energy from the sun is visible. Everything in this world is visible to us. Whereas, in contrast, in the black sun world, this sun is powered by our mental energy or our spiritual energy. This in turn powers this sun, so you can see that even though we can see this physical world here, it's all being powered ultimately by this world here. And people are hoping to go from this world to the black sun world through the North Pole. So that's a theory that is out there. And I want to connect these two together. You can see how visually they look very similar. And that's what makes me think that the Duffer Brothers, the directors of the show, are trying to send us a message through the show, through the metaphor of the upside down. Okay, now let me continue with the story. So, we know that Will and his mother are able to talk with each other. What do we know about the upside down exactly? We know that it looks very similar and is more desolate. We know that they are able to communicate through energy. So she sets up a number of Christmas lights, and she gives each of them a letter. Let's say this one is A, and Will can light it up by being close to it on his side. Okay? So they communicate through him disturbing the electromagnetic field on his side, and it reaches her side, and that's how they communicate. And that's really, really interesting to me, because it shows a little bit about what this universe is. So we have the science teacher who tries to explain it this way. He gives an analogy and he says, imagine a tightrope. Okay? And he says, imagine that there is an acrobat walking on this tightrope. And this is what we are able to get to on this is the plane that we walk upon. This is our existence, our world, everything we can get to. And he says, now imagine that there is a flea. And so the tightrope walker can only travel up here. Otherwise they'll fall off. But the flea can travel underneath. The flea can travel on the side. The flea can travel anywhere along this tightrope. So the flea can get to other dimensions. So he's just saying how it is theoretically possible for there to be a group of creatures that can only exist along one dimension, and another group that can reach far dimensions. Now, they ask him, what if we're the tightrope walker? What if we're not the flea? How do we get to the other dimensions? Because they know that Will has gotten over to the other dimension, so they know that Will isn't a flea, and yet, Will is a tightrope walker, and yet he's in the upside down. How did he get there? And the teacher describes it in this way. He says, imagine. He uses different words, but this is the basics. He says, imagine you're here. You're in this K right here. And you're trying to get to this one right here. And you are, the K and the 1 are millions of light years apart. Now you have this very flat surface. And that describes how you're able to get from one place to another. You can only travel across this surface a tiny bit that way, a tiny bit that way. And in order to get to the 1, you would have to, bit by bit, go. no human could live long enough to do that if the rules of the game are the same as this very flat $1 bill. And so they have to change the rules of the game, and they have to bend the $1 bill so that the K and the 1 are touching. Now, that is what describes a wormhole. The idea that we are able to bend space-time in order to get the K and the 1 closer together. However, that describes a way of getting us from two places that are very far apart from each other. And so I believe what we're really, the only thing you should take away from that explanation was that perhaps it takes a very large amount of energy for them to travel across from the regular world to the upside down, and not literally that the regular world and the upside down are millions of light years away from each other. I think all we can assume here is that we have this regular world, and we have the spot on the upside down over here. Let's say I put my finger underneath that K, and someone does something in the regular world, right? If I scratch this, I can feel it underneath where my finger underneath here, this finger underneath, is in the upside down, right under the K, and the finger on top. Scratching is affecting the sensations of the finger in the upside down. So, what's really happening here is that these worlds are somehow quantum entangled with each other. And that's how they're able to communicate through this electromagnetic field. They're not millions of light years apart. They are apart, but there is a way, there's perhaps a portal to get through, which is how he got there in the first place. But the most important point to get out of here is that he's not in an alternate universe. He is in a quantum entangled universe, which is why everything looks almost exactly the same, and both universes are able to affect each other through electromagnetic energy. So what does that bring us to when we get to the flat earth theories about going through the North Pole to get through to the other side? I think that what the Duffer Brothers are trying to say is that there is no such thing as the other side, where you suddenly become your full potential and realize your full spiritual power. I think that they are saying that the other side, the black sun side, is really just a quantum entangled universe, and that you will not necessarily find the panacea here that you are looking for, that it is a desolate place, and that if you were to try to get here, that you would run into some problems, that it would be both disappointing and dangerous to try to get here. And I believe that they're coding this message for a few different reasons. It's not just that the upside down looks very much like the light sun, black sun duality that we see in a lot of flat earth videos. It is also that they have incorporated the certain blood symbolism into Stranger Things. Now we know that a lot of people think that they need to use blood over intent rituals to get from this world to this world. And you can see inside of Stranger Things that blood seems to mean a few different things. One of them is that blood shows up anytime 11 uses her psychic powers. So blood is a price that she needs to pay. And the second thing that it does is that anytime someone is bleeding, the monster shows up. So blood attracts demons. And for both of these reasons, I think that they are trying to say that these blood sacrifices that show up during the blood over intent rituals are a price that people are paying, and that it may be too steep of a cost to pay, and that the blood also attracts demons that want to feed upon you. So I think that they are warning against these blood rituals to try to get over into this world, because as we have seen with Barbara, when she started bleeding, she attracted the monster to her, and she was brought into the Upside Down, and the monster started using her body to feed the creatures that were either its offspring or were its own food source. So I believe that these blood over intent rituals will attract demons to you, and that they will open you up to the possibility of being a mental energy or spiritual energy source for demons trying to enact their own agendas. And so that is what I believe is the symbolism inside of the Duffer Brothers TV show. And I think it's very important to pay attention to what they are trying to say. I think that they are going to show more about the Upside Down in season 2. They have already said that they have a 30-page document describing the Upside Down. And so I believe that they are using Stranger Things as a way to communicate with flat earthers and other conspiracy theorists about the black sun and about the advisability of trying to get into the black sun world, and that the way that they did this was by attracting conspiracy theorists and occultists to their TV show in the first place by using occult imagery and well-known conspiracy theories. And once they attracted people in there, then they were able to subtly send this message to us through the upside down. So I encourage everyone to study the upside down and to decide whether you believe that there is a coded message inside of their depiction of the upside down. Well, that is all for now. Thank you for listening.